Hi, I'm Seamus Calder with Money and Tech. I'm here at Coin Congress San Francisco with Perianne Boring, President of the Digital Chamber of Commerce. How's it going today, Perianne?
Very well, thank you.
All right, so we just saw you talk, and we have a couple questions about the Digital Chamber of Commerce. I mean, obviously, how did that get started? I understand you guys didn't, that was initially started a couple months ago, you guys were forming it, but then the bit license kind of happened right when, so that wasn't, it wasn't formed directly as a result of the bit license, basically, but it's your issue now, right?
Right, we didn't, the whole bit license deal, just the timing ended up being kind of at the same time we opened. But I officially launched last Saturday at the North American Bitcoin Conference in Chicago. It was the 19th of July. It's an initiative I've been working on for several months now. I formerly worked as a financial services journalist, and Bitcoin was a topic that I covered very regularly. I also write for Forbes.com, and Bitcoin is something I covered on Forbes as well. Before I went to journalism, I worked on Capitol Hill for a member of the Financial Services Committee. I was a legislative analyst. So I was the person that would meet with all the lobbyists when they wanted to get something to Congress. So given those two backgrounds in my career, I was able to very quickly pick up on the need for a trade association for the digital currency industry without having an authoritative representative industry body. Really, our voices are not heard. Trade associations' voices are heard much louder than any individual company or any lobbyist, and the reason why is because we represent the industry as a whole and not just one specific business interest. So the industry has matured to a point where it's absolutely imperative that we have this type of representation in Washington, and I'm looking to do it in a very responsible way. We have a very well leveraged budget. We're going to have a very transparent budget, and this is really just to provide a source for policymakers, Bitcoin companies, digital currency companies, but also the press to get accurate, fair, non-biased information on what the heck this magical internet money is.
What is the reaction that you've been getting on Capitol Hill? Are people not at all understanding of it, or have you been getting some support somewhere, or what's it looking like?
Well, according to a GfK study that was published in the Wall Street Journal a few months ago, 76% of Americans have never heard of Bitcoin, but largely for people that do know what Bitcoin is, their perception is largely based on the negative press coverage that came out of Silk Road, Mt. Gox, Liberty Reserve. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have a very good reaction when you talk about Bitcoin, and that's very true in the nation's capital as well. A lot of members don't have a positive response when you first mention it to them. So our job is to educate to policymakers, but also advocate to policymakers what digital currencies are, how they work, how they'll increase access to financial services, explain the social benefit of using Bitcoin and digital currencies. This story has not been told in Washington. A lot of people still don't know what it is. A lot of people around the country, a lot of consumers don't know what it is. There's a huge education gap. I like to say that we're going from horse and buggy to a spaceship. So in order to convince people to get off their horses to get on the spaceship, it sounds a little scary at first, but there's a level of education that needs to happen. And if we can convince them that we're moving technology forward and it's going to increase the standard of living and it's going to increase access to financial services, I think we'll be successful.
Now, I understand lobbying also kind of just, as much as you're lobbying for something, there is also occasionally lobbying in the opposite direction. Have you encountered any anti-Bitcoin lobbying at all?
Well, the lobbying efforts in D.C. around Bitcoin are very fragmented. We do know that Peck, Madigan, and Jones was hired by MasterCard to register 5 lobbyists, and they're specifically lobbying on Bitcoin and virtual currencies, or digital currencies. What they're actually saying to policymakers, we have no idea, and that's the whole point, is we don't really know what lobbyists are saying to members of Congress. And as someone that used to be the person that met with all the lobbyists, I can say it's very, very important that we have industry representation to bring these efforts together. That way we get a coherent message. I think overall the industry has been very supportive of these initiatives. The industry has matured to a position where people are starting to realize that this is very important. Washington's kind of a necessary evil of doing business. Every industry in the world has a trade association in DC, and now Bitcoin does too, and it's very important for the health of the future of the industry.
Okay, now what I really want to also ask you about is bit license, because as we said, that kind of came up right after you launched. And you are calling for basically people to comment on it, and I know you guys are campaigning to get, because there's a 45-day window to submit comments on the current ruling, but you guys, I know you're not alone in that either, as I've been hearing a lot of people saying that there's a large effort to try to get people to extend this 45-day window because it's ridiculous. So how many days are left on that 45-day ruling? If the 45-day ruling passes and you guys don't get it extended, is there a way to reopen it, or is it just we're screwed.
Well, we're waiting any minute now for Ben Lonsky to publish these proposed regulations. He published a draft last week, and then he said he was going to publish the final draft today, which hasn't, I just checked, it's not up yet, but sometime today it should be up. And then we'll actually know exactly what the comment period is going to look like. And in the draft regulations that he posed last week, it said they were going to give a 45-day comment period, which is the statutory minimum. These are 40 pages of regulations. That is not enough time for the industry to go through them and to issue an intelligent response. So today I held a press conference here at Coin Congress in San Francisco, and I'm calling on Lonsky to extend the comment period through the end of 2014 to give the industry adequate time to review them and issue a response. I'm also calling a call to action to people that work within the digital currency and the Bitcoin industry. Anyone who would be affected by these rules and regulations should write the New York Department of Financial Services and express your concerns. I cannot stress how important grassroots support is behind these types of efforts. Your voice will be heard, it should be heard, and it's very encouraging for the community to get behind these efforts to make your voices heard in New York. I'll also, as soon as we have these regulations up, I'll publish on our website, digitalchamber.org, a very easy way, whatever the address is or the instructions, we'll make sure people have the resources they need to get their comments in. And we'll also issue some other talking points, guidelines of what specifically in these regs could be detrimental to the industry. Could
you give us maybe some of the general overviews of what have been the major complaints about the BitLicense ruling?
One of the worst sections was section 200.8b. In this section, it forces Bitcoin companies to invest their profits into investment-grade, high-quality investments, and it prohibits the industry from investing their profits back into the industry that they work in. This makes no sense. So that's one provision we'll be fighting against. Also, section 200.9b and c prohibits Bitcoin companies from operating like a bank. Bitcoin companies are not allowed to hypothecate. So they're not allowed to lend on fractional reserve, which is the juiciest part of being a bank, right? But at the same time, they're regulating us like a bank. So if you're going to regulate us like a bank, then why are they telling us we can't operate like a bank? But the thing is that we're not a bank. If we're not fiat currencies. So, I would call for regulations that operate off the blockchain. I think the best way to regulate this technology is to use this technology, and that's why we're calling for a comment period that extends to the end of the year to allow us to go into the New York Department of Financial Services and spend some more time working with them. I think 80% of these regulations could be overridden if we just audited using the blockchain. There's some software that could be developed in the meantime that would make this very easy, but we don't need to be regulated like a bank because we're not banks. It's like telling a spaceship it has to operate on a railroad track. We have banking regulations that make sense for banks, but it doesn't make sense for this new innovative technology.
And then one final question on that, it's just kind of a more general BitLicense thing, is because it's New York technically, but this is disruptive to the entire industry. I mean, this isn't just if New York, you can't do Bitcoin in New York. How does that affect everyone else everywhere?
Well, any company that's doing business with a resident of New York would be affected, and it's possible there's arguments that if you're doing company with if your company is doing business with another company that has clients or customers in New York, then that third company might also be regulated. So it would be very difficult. I mean, this really is wide-reaching. International digital currency companies would have to comply with these, and a lot of international companies are not comfortable with these types of regulations. Anyone applying for a BitLicense has to submit a lot of personal information. That's very different from what other countries call for, and it's really going to drive Bitcoin, digital currency, digital asset companies out of New York. And it's also going to drive these companies overseas, which I know is not Lonsky's goal. And that, again, that's why we're asking for an extended comment period so we can go in, spend a little bit more time talking with him about what specifically is smart regulation and not necessarily speedy or hasty regulation.
Well, thank you again for meeting with us, Perianne. Now, just for our viewers, could you also just say you're going to have every information for anybody who wants to submit a comment up on your website once this is actually released?
Digitalchamber.org, that's our website. In the next couple of days, as soon as these regulations are published on the New York Department of Financial Services website, we're going to take them, we're going to go through them, and we'll have full instructions of what's the easiest way, whether you're a Bitcoin owner or miner or a CEO of one of these companies. Everybody needs to get involved, and we'll provide some very basic comments of how you can do that. I know this adds a lot of red tape and bureaucracy to what people are already doing, but it's extremely important. So this call to action really is very important for the health of the industry.
Thanks again. That was Perianne Boring. I'm Seamus Calder with Money and Tech here at San Francisco Coin Congress.